With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yoma Daf Pei Gimel. We are up to Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, the middle of the Amud, starting with the Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to be speaking about someone who was seized with an illness that's called in Chazal bulmus. It's an illness, it's a life-threatening disease. It's induced by hunger. And one of the symptoms that the person is in their dangerous bulmus state is that their vision becomes weak. We'll see in the Gemara that there are other symptoms, that there are other chushim that a person has that becomes weakened. And being that it's a life-threatening disease, not only are we going to continue to learn the sugya, that other the three exceptions, there is nothing that we do that can, God forbid, hinder our very life. And Yom Kippur and fasting on Yom Kippur is put aside. The person who needs will eat. But bulmus has a uniqueness that the immediacy, the need to eat mamish ASAP, ASAP, is more than in other diseases, and therefore it's going to result in unique halachas about what exactly should be given to the person that has bulmus. And we're going to continue to learn the general rule that even a suffix nefashis is doicha. We're going to go from Yom Kippur into Shabbos. We're going to be learning about if a person has tevel midrabanan. That means a person has produce that on a biblical level, it doesn't need to be tithed at all. But midrabanan, it has to be tithed. Tithing, separating Trumas and Maasros on Shabbos and on Yom Tov is also an isur derabanan. So here, you're going to be violating a rabbinic rule whenever there is a need to eat ASAP. The question is, if you have to pick and choose, so Rabbi is of the opinion that a person should tithe that produce, even if what's needed to cure the ill is all of the food, which means that after you separate the truma, the ill person will eat the truma. Yet it's better for the person to eat truma rather than for a person to eat tevel midrabanan. Truma midrabanan, tevel midrabanan. We're going to learn a lot about that. And we're going to learn these are one of the famous dafim in Shas that speak about remedies. We're going to have various interesting remedies for bulmus. We're going to have stories on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis of Tanoim and of Amoraim who were seized with bulmus and how they healed themselves, which will lead us into a very famous Gemara. At least for me, it's famous because my father of blessed memory always quoted that Rabbi Meir have a doyek bishma. That Rav Meir, by hearing the name of individual, would right away come to an understanding of that person's current character and how that played itself out, how Rabbi Meir protected himself, unlike his chaverim, and a lot more. It's mamish gavaldik. So let us start on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph, the middle of the Amud. We are learning the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Mi sha'achazoi bulmus. If someone was seized with the illness called bulmus, says Rashi, choyle ha'oiches machmasri oven. What brought about the illness? Hungering. And when that happens, as a symptom, enough kehois. One's vision becomes weakened, and once a person gets this weakening in the vision, vuhu mesukin lamus. That's considered halachically a person's life is in danger. However, but when the person eats, the moment they realize that their vision was restored, then you know that you are well. So, for example, when it comes to other reasons why a person is going to break their fast on Yom Kippur, we mentioned it quickly, but we'll mention it again quickly, that even if a person has to break his or her fast, they try to do it with shiurim on Yom Kippur. So whatever the shiur of eating and of drinking is, they have lesser than that shiur. And then they wait the time that it takes you to have a pras of bread. As we all know in practice, it's good to know these dinim, we should never need it. And then at least on a biblical level, you're not violating your fast. We don't apply shiurim to bulmus, because once a person's vision is weakened because of this bulmus illness, you are out of danger when your vision is restored. Eat and drink and eat and drink until your vision is restored. Inside the Mishnah. Did we give him food? Afilu devarim tameim, even if what's available is non-kosher food. And by the way, kosher food is available a block away, 2 minutes away. Here is what's available right now. There's an immediacy, there's an urgency. And how much and until when does the person eat? Until the person's vision is restored. Furthermore, another din of the Mishnah. If someone was bitten by a mad dog, many people now would word this illness as rabies. We're going to have a lot about Kelev Shaita. If we're not going to learn it in this daf, we'll go into the next daf. It's going to be another phenomenal Gemara that Chazal understood this mad dog potential illness not only to be of physical nature, but there was also some sort of esoteric nature to it as well. There's a ruach ra'ah that's connected to this Kelev Shaita, and as we'll see in next daf, that the precautions we have to take to protect ourselves from an evil spirit is even more than the precautions that we have to take to protect ourselves from a physical ailment. And in the times of the Mishnah, there were certain remedies, like we have nowadays, that were challenged by the then accepted science of medicine. So there were people that felt that if you take the liver lobe from the mad dog, and you feed it to the person who was bitten by that dog, they'll get better. The Chachamim hold that this remedy is a folklore remedy. It's not a scientific remedy. And therefore, says the Mishnah, the Tanach holds that ein machilin oisoi mechatzar kavod sheloi. This is whether it's Yom Kippur, whether Bechlal. The liver of a dog, any part of a dog is not kosher. On the other hand, if a person's life is in danger, then all the rules are put aside. But you can only put it aside for something that's accepted as a proper therapy. So the Chachamim hold that the person who was bitten by the mad dog eating its liver lobe is not going to be a refuah. However, amazing. Machloikis Tanoim. Rabbi Masya ben Choresh is matir. He holds that this is a remedy enough that will justify someone eating non-kosher. I forgot the names, but the person who came with the first vaccine in Europe was a Yid who learned this Mishnah, and he said it was from this Mishnah that he got the idea that from the illness, if you introduce what's called today the dead virus in a person, the body creates, as we know, antibodies, and that brings about a protection and a refuah. It was based on this Mishnah. Amazing. Another illness, which the Mishnah calls hachoishesh bigroinoi, literally meaning a person who has a pain in his or her throat. And as we will learn in next daf, there is an illness called sefidna. It's an illness that only begins in the teeth and in the gums, and it hurts. But if not treated, it could extend and spread into one's intestines, which means into one's inner organs. And then it might become a deathly illness. So we don't have to wait for the person first to become deathly ill and then to deal with it. Once you already have this pain, the early onset of this illness called sefidna, then matilin loy sam b'toich piv, even b'Shabbos, then you put a remedy in his or her mouth. Even on Shabbos, guys, we're not only speaking about overriding the rabbinic gezerah of not taking medicine, right? Even for a chayla she'ein by sakana, we're not talking about that. We're speaking about a person who is allowed to violate biblical Shabbos by harvesting, by cutting herbs out of the ground, and any other biblical violation. Why? Because even though now this is not an illness that is life-threatening, but if not treated, it might become life-threatening. In other words, we draw the line in the sand way more than in other halachas whenever life is involved, because of the rule, b'pnei shehu safek nefashos, and v'chol safek nefashos is doiches Shabbos. The Gemara will explain that which appears to be a superfluous expression in the Mishnah. Another din in the Mishnah, and we're dedicating this class for the miracle that is needed for all the Yidden and everyone else that are trapped now in Surfside, and that's what we're learning about. We're learning about a building that's collapsing. Misha nafla olav mapoilis. If a person is in an area where a building collapsed, and here going through the rubble is going to save lives if someone is still alive underneath the rubble. Going through the rubble could even include a biblical violation. I'm not even talking about nowadays with the amazing machinery that we have and electricity and fire. But even then, once you start moving around these big pieces of stone and of earth, it can be charisha, it can be binyan. We don't care. A building collapsed, even safik usham, safik einasham. You don't even know if someone is there. Safik chai, safik meis. Even if someone is there, maybe they already got to a bit passed away, but maybe they are alive. Safik kuti, safik Yisrael. Kuti in this context is a non-Jew, and theoretically we're not machal Shabbos to save the life of a non-Jew, but Chazal already said that mishum eva we do, but let's just go weiter. So in all of these cases, that means even if the chance of finding someone alive, it's not 50-50, not 60-40. It can be a very small percent. Nevertheless, mefakhin olav esagal. We're going to occupy ourselves. We're going to clear the rubble. Furthermore, once you find the person alive, and the Mishnah really means to say that sometimes tragically, by the time you get to the victim under the rubble, they are barely living. And sometimes a person can say that even if we will remove the rubble, the person will live another minute. And leaving it as it is, they'll live another 30 seconds. In other words, it looks like it's too late. If the person is breathing, there's no such a thing as too late. It doesn't matter if our Chilul Shabbos will only bring about another second of life. We are obligated to add that second of life. It's only if the imays, once the person passed away and you know there's no one else there, then even though there is an inyan of kavod habriyos, but that doesn't justify biblical violation of Shabbos. If someone passed away, then yanichu, you leave things the way they are until after Shabbos. All right. So we're going to focus on many parts of the Mishnah, starting with the first opening line. We're speaking about this illness called bulmus, and as we have committed the Baraisas to expound upon this illness and its remedies. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'ar kol nehim v'dvarim. Tanu Rabbanan. The Baraisa is really speaking about the night of Yom Kippur. So explained the Rishonim that the concept is, it's not about how you feel. It's you eat until your vision is restored. What happens if this is happening at night and you don't have candles that are lit and the person cannot see to know whether the vision is restored or not? So there is another indicator to know that the food is already kicking in and it's preventing this potential death because of bulmus, is mishayavchen ben toiv l'ra. We give the person different dishes. The moment the person is able to taste, to differentiate between something that tastes good and something that does not taste good, Amar Abaye explaining, Ubetama, bulmus doesn't only affect one's vision, it also affects, like we said, we have 5 senses. It affects the sense of taste. So another indicator, if you're living in the dark or Yom Kippur at night, so eat until you begin to see what is good and what is not good. So even though we learned in the Mishnah that there is an immediacy, there's an urgency, and you don't wait another minute, but if you have different foods available right here, right now, it's not about the time delay, but different foods have different levels of prohibitions. We don't go to the extreme and say, it's bulmus, anything. No, anything, not to waste time. As much as you need until your vision is restored. But if you have 2 levels of machalas asurais, here also, eat that which is less prohibited. Machilin oisai hakal kal, from the least. You ideally have this person violate that which is considered a lesser violation. And only then, if that was not enough, then he should go to that which is considered a greater violation. For example, if there is in front of this person tevel and nevela. Now, before produce is tied, let's speak about lakula alma, the 5 grains. According to most, 5 grains and olives and grapes. According to some Rishonim, all fruits. Prior to it being tithed, if anyone eats it, a kohen or a non-kohen, the person is chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Eating nevela is a terrible thing, but you don't have the penalty of misa b'dei shamayim. It's a lot. You get malchus. So here we have to wait. So tevel is more chamur. So what do you give this person? Malchilanois and nevela. Now, to make something clear, if tevel is here and nevela is 2 doors away, you give the guy what's here. No, we don't waste time. We're speaking about a case where it won't make a difference time-wise. Then hakalkal. Another example, if there is tevel or shmita produce. What's the issue with shmita produce? So Rashi says it's speaking about a time that the produce that you have in your house is no longer found in your region, in the Holy Land. It's divided into 3 regions for the Chayas Basada. And here we have a positive mitzvah of doing what we call biur, peiros, shmita. So eating it without doing biur is a violation of an asay. So here says the Mishnah, obviously shvi'is and not tevel. However, if the options are tevel and truma, now here you can argue they're both the same, because if you want to understand the severity through its punishment, eating tevel, misibedei shamayim. A non-kohen, obviously a non-kohen eating truma, misibedei shamayim. The person here that we're talking about is a non-kohen. So, and we're saying the rule hakal, kal. So what's more kal? So the Gemara says that's a machlokes tanoim. The Tanya says in a brayso machilin oisei tevel. Better for him to violate only tevel, the ein machilin oisei truma. So holds the chachamim. However, ben tema oimer no pumfakert truma and not tevel. Comes along Rabba and he adds azoy omar Rabba heicha de efsher bechulin the kula alma loy pligi the misaknina lei or misafina lei. Separating trumas or maisres, even though we are saying that we'll almost eat right away. Guys, when Mashiach is coming, we'll become so familiarized in the separating of trumas or maisres, it will take us a rega. It's not called a waste of time. So he's making a good point. If you have a lot of produce and the estimated amount of food that's needed for this person to get better, for his or her vision to be restored, is not the whole pile of food, is only part of it. Says Rabbah, for sure, separate trumas or maisres, and now the person will be healed by eating chulin. There's no machlokes there. I will see separating trumas or maisres is asur midrabanan, but that's the point. It's only asur midrabanan, even if it's on Shabbos or on Yom Kippur. Ki pligi, where do we have a machlokes tanoim? B'dolo yafsher b'chulin. Gevaldik. So you have a pile of food, and we know bulmas or geval. You need to eat, I don't know, 2 ounces. 10 ounces, a 12-ounce steak, I'm just giving it a certain amount of food. If you're going to separate the trumas, so it's not going to be tevel, you will have to eat up everything, the chulin and the truma. In other words, you're going to, when the solution is not tevel, not truma, I mean, it sounds like it's the obvious. We'll see why it's not that obvious. Then separate. The question is, even if you were to separate it, so you took away the tevel status, but we are foreseeing the ill person, the patient, to need to eat everything that's here, which would also include the truma, and that's where you have the machlokes. The second to last line, the mar sovar tevel chamur, and therefore better separate, even though it means you're going to eat truma. Abi nish tevel or mar sovar trumas chamura. Dafke, don't separate it. Why? Explains the Gemara. Mar sovar tevel chamur. But the fact that truma is fit to be eaten to kohanim, the last line, even though I'm not the kohen, the guy with the bulmus is not the kohen. The fact that truma is not usur to everyone indicates that truma is a lesser problem. Umar Savar, no, truma is chamura. Why? Because once it's truma, a non-kohen may never eat it. Tevel always has a solution. Tevel, since it could be made fit, is considered a lesser problem. And again, that's the question when you have to pick and choose one or the other. Daf Pei Gimel Amid Beis. And now the Gemara is going to challenge the need for Rabba to make that whole statement. In other words, of course, you can counter argue, don't even waste time separating it, but the Gemara is not saying that. Of course, if by separating the Trumas Maisris, which takes a mamash arega, if what is foreseen to be needed to heal the patient is only from the leftover chulin, of course, what not truma, not chulin. Efsher b'chulim pshita. So the Gemara says, nah, Rabba is not pshita, because Rabba wanted to emphasize even when it's on Shabbos. And what's the chiddush on Shabbos? That Shabbos normally we do not separate trumas from maisros. The way we word it is because even though you're making a tikkun that's not discernible begashmias to the eye, the Chachamim nevertheless say it's like tikkun keli, it's like tikkun mana. happens also to be that since you're not allowed to separate trumas from maasros, so tevel becomes muktzah. I'm mentioning muktzah because you should know that there are many levels of rabbinic violations, and muktzah is way up there. Oh, so the Gemara says no. Shabbos nami, even if it's on Shabbos, of course, if efsher b'chulin separate trumas from maasros, because I know that it's a rabbinic violation, but on the other hand, it's only a rabbinic violation. If you won't separate it, you're going to be violating tevel midoiraisa. He says, even if you're going to call it tiltul, which is there's tikkun mana, even in muktzah, it's only midrabanan. So the Gemara says, nah, Rabbah speaking about a case where the whole tevel problem to begin with is also only midrabanan. An example, guys, we're going to learn this in the next daf. Vegetables, according to all opinions, only need to be tithed midrabanan. Another example, if you have grain, but the grain did not grow in the ground in Israel, even if you took the earth of the Holy Land and you put it into a vase or into a vase, if it's not perforated, then biblically, whatever grows from it need not be tithed. That's the whole sugya that we have so many times, that if there is a hole in the bottom of the vase and it has to be within a certain airspace above, close to the ground, then it draws some of its nourishment from the ground. It's considered planted in the ground. But here the case is, which means to begin with, the whole obligation to tithe is only rabbinic. Now this is gavaldik. It's only tevel midrabanan. And don't forget that separating it, fixing it, is another rabbinic violation. So that is where we say, Mar Savar, that tevel is chamur, and therefore violate the rabbinic muktzah. Don't violate rabbinic tevel. Umar Savar, again, this is in the case where even after separating it, you will have to eat all of it, so you're going to end up eating truma. Eating truma is more chamur, even though it's also only truma midrabanan, and that is the machlokes. Now, now it's gavaldik. So first of all, Rabbah has a chiddush, but the Rabbah now is making a statement that when it's efsher b'chulin, Rabbah says that it should be tithed. L'kula alma. You're right. The machlokes is that even after you will tithe it, you have to eat up everything, which will mean the truma. But if you don't have to eat up anything, then if it's just about eating tevel midrabanan versus violating the rabbinic prohibition of tithing, Rabbah holds that it's better l'kula alma for you to tithe it, better than even eating tevel midrabanan. That's what the Rabbah says. The Gemara is saying maybe that in itself is a machlokes tanoim. Lema tanoihi, the Tanya. Guys, we learned this. Mi shenashchay nachash. If someone was bitten by a snake, we're speaking about on Shabbos, and you have to bring a doctor. So let's begin with rabbinic violations that are overruled. We're going menakala lakavit. So koidem loyroife mimakim lamakim. Like Rashi says, even if the doctor is outside of the tchum, so what? Go bring the doctor. Another din, umikarin lo yasatar negoilus. Even though we already brought up, we'll speak more about it soon, that remedies that are not accepted as scientific at your given time may not be done on Shabbos. Well, that's really the machlokes between the Tanakama and Amasya. But here the minig then was that if someone was bitten by a snake, they would take a tarnagoylus, they would take a hen, and they would tear open the hen, and they would place the hen on the bite, on the snake bite area of the body. And this Braisa holds that's good enough of a remedy, even though here killing a hen is already an isur doiraisa, right? Shchita. Shchita, as we know, doesn't mean shchita. It means, taking the life. Even drawing blood is considered part of that malacha. Another din, the goizes in loy as ha-kirishin, that if you have leeks or other vegetables that were used either to eat or to put on the wound, and again, you're harvesting, it's koitzer, you do that. And the ein sorech la'aser divrei Rebbe. Guys, don't forget that leeks, lakula alma, vegetables, they have to be tithed. Only midrabanan. He says don't tithe it. However, Rabbi Elazar ben Abshimon Oimer, no. Same concept. Tithing doesn't take time. Lo yoichel at she'ya'aser. You have to tithe the vegetables. Now, l'cho'ura, what Rabbi took as a pshita, l'cho'ura, that's the machlokes. We are saying that even if after tithing it, what is going to be needed won't be the truma part. There's a machlokas tanoim whether you should tithe it or not. So l'chayra nema that Rabbi Elazar ben Shimoni, Rabba will follow that shita. We're not refuting Rabba, but this does not follow Rebbe. Right? Rebbe says that don't tithe. Eat tevel midrabanan. Sounding like that eating tevel midrabanan is a lesser problem than being misakin produce by separating on Shabbos. So says the Gemara, no, Rabba indeed can go according to all. Afilu teima Rebbe. At kan loy ka'amar Rebbe hasam ela. Since by vegetables there is never a biblical obligation. Ever. It's not about was it planted in a perforated pot or not a perforated. Is it planted in the Holy Land or outside? No. Yerakis are only midrabanan. That's why Rebbe holds. I don't want you to tithe it. However, Abel Meiser Dagon, since elsewhere, not in the case that we mentioned above, not when it was planted in an otzitz, right? But elsewhere, it's Doiraisa. So here argues the Gemara to make Rabba go L'Kula Alma. I feel a Rebbe moide. The Isharas leBa'atzis she'enakov. Then that might lead and he'll be moide that as long as tithing it will guarantee that you won't eat the truma part, tithe it. And again, the machlokes we learned on Amud Aleph is that there's so little food, and this guy with bulmus will have to eat all of it up. So he's either going to eat tevel or truma. That is where you have the machlokes tanoi, which is considered hakal kal weiter tanu rabbanon. Now we're going to go into remedies. And it's good to speak out now, and we'll repeat this on Daf Pei Daled, the chayrim hakadmoinim, that we are not to practice Talmudic medicine. And from the various reasons that are given, I know there are exceptions, but generally that's the rule. And the reason that's given is because Chazal, they did not clarify, certainly not the amounts and the intervals of these remedies, which means that one can follow to the best of their ability, and it will not work because they're not doing as they said, and it's going to be moitzilaz on the remedies of the Chachamim. And there are other reasons for that, but that's an intro. But let's go learn what they said. So Tana Rabbanan, Misha Chazei Bulmas. So then Ma'achilin Oisan Davash, the person should be fed honey, V'chol Mina Mesik, and all types of sweets. Why? Says the Tana, because Advash V'chol Mina Mesika Me'iren Mo'oir Einav Shaladam. Someone needs his or her vision to be restored. The way to go is having sweets. Aha. Now, and we're quoting a story that's quoted many times throughout the Gemara, that Shaul HaMelech at a certain battle, he decreed that no one should be eating or drinking. He imposed the fast day. His own son, Yohanan, was not aware of it. And because of him not being aware of that takon of his father, he had a staff and he stuck it into honey and he ate some honey. And with the whole consequence of what almost happened to Yonasan. But he also, Yonasan, made a statement which was really a reprimand to his father, because he got so much koyach from having a little bit of honey. He really didn't understand that why would my father make a takana against soldiers in battle to fast when we want them to be stronger, not weaker. And he said, Ru'una, gebakuk, that ki oiru einai, that my eyes, my vision got better. Okay, so that's a source from scripture that sweets are good to vision. The problem is that's a real proof, right? We gave an intro. Ein raya, only a zecher. How is this a zecher? It's clear. So the Gemara says not because Yonasan didn't have bulmas. The Hassan loved bulmas achazeh. He was healthy to begin with, and he just made a comment how sweets, they make your vision even better. Amar Abai, this remedy of having sweets, or b'chlal, that sweets are beneficial to your vision, is elo la'acher achila, that only is beneficial if you, prior to eating sweets, you ate a meal. A meal means bread, ate food. Avol kaidem achila, but if a person didn't eat, and they're going to go ahead and have sweets, then migrar goder, they're going to make you hungrier. And you know what? Bulmus is brought about because the person was fasting. It's fasting, starving is what brings about bulmus. So especially if someone has bulmus, can you imagine not eating? No, just sweets will make you hungry. It will make it worse. As it says, and the story here was that they found an Egyptian man in the field, and they brought him to King David, and they gave him first lechem vayochel, vayashkeyu mayim, and they gave him water, and then pelach devela. They gave him a cake of pressed figs. Ushnei tzemukim, either it means 2 raisins or 2 clusters of raisins, which are sweets. Vayochel, and he ate. Vatoshem ruchei elav, and his spirit, his ruach, came back to him. Ki loy ochal lechem leishasamayim shloisha yomim ushloisha leilos. And this is a person that after fasting 72 hours, he was a good he was a good candidate to get bulmus. And they dafka did not give him sweets right away. First, they gave him bread and water, and then, indeed, sweets are even that much better. What you really should give, sweets, yeah, but not pure sweets. Aliyah b'dvash. Aliyah is the tail of a sheep. It's very fatty meat. And add sweets to it. Rav Huna b'reid Rabbi Yeshua Amar, even soilless nikia, even fine flour. We know that sweets are good for bulmus, even for bulmus, but on the other hand, don't eat it on an empty stomach. So you can put it in the fatty meat, put it inside the soilless. Let's make challah with honey. It's good for your vision. But he mentioned the good wheat flour without any whole wheat, God forbid. It's better. Rav Papa says that even if you're going to have flour of barley, it's good because you're not going to be an empty stomach. You're putting devash into it, and it's going to help you get your vision back. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Pam achaz achuzani bulmus. There was a time that I got bulmus. Veratzti, and I went running lemizracha shel te'ena, to the east side of a fig tree. You see, my friends, the sun that shines in the morning and in the afternoon, but there is something about the pre-noon, the morning sunlight, how it positively affects fruits. Therefore, the fruits that are on the eastern side of a tree will be sweeter and better versus the afternoon sun that will be relative, detrimental to the fruits. So Rabbi Yochanan went, he knew he needs to have something sweet. He also knew that he has to have it not to have just sweets. So here he's eating a sweet fruit. So he ran to the eastern side of the fig tree, and through that he got better. And he said, I fulfilled on myself the pasuk that ha-chachma techaya balel. I possess chachma, and the chachma brought me back life. Had I not known that, I would have eaten from the western side, and that even though it might have tasted sweet, it would not bring the benefit of what we're talking about, that the sweetness. No, if you think that you're going to buy a Pashka's candy and eat it, oy gewalt. No, even the fig from the western side doesn't work. Honey, or the fig from the eastern side of the tree. The Tani, Rabbi Yosef, what should you eat? Yafna lemizracha. And as it says, that mimeged tevuosh shamish, and from the delicacies of the sun's fruit. So we see from the pasuk that the sun makes a fruit that much better, but we know it's dafka, the eastern sun. Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yossi, they were once traveling. It's connected to their traveling. They got dehydrated, they got hungry, and achazei bulmus l'Rabbi Yehuda. So from these two, Rabbi Yehuda got bulmus first. What did he do? Kapchei l'roya. There was a shepherd right there. The shepherd had bread. Before the sweet stuff, you have to eat, like it says in the Mishnah. Now, if one's life is not in danger, to take someone else's food, even if you plan to pay them back later, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to steal with the intention of repaying it. But if someone's life is in danger, then you got to do what you need to do, and then you pay it back later. So he was mikapeach. That means that he took it b'koyach. He deprived that shepherd with that shepherd's bread and achle l'rifta. He was allowed to do it again because we look at bulmus. Once a person's vision deteriorates because of hunger, don't play around with that. Eat right away. And Amat Leid Rabbi Yosi, he made a statement he made a critical statement to his chaver, and he told him, Kipachta saroya. He says that you deprived the shepherd. Lav dafke, it should have been done. However, and Rabbi Yosi, by the way, didn't eat anything. So Rabbi Yosi now is hungrier. And Kimat Lamas, the time they reached their destination, they reached the town. Now Bulmas, Achaze Bulmas le Rabbi Yosi. Now Rabbi Yosi didn't have to take b'koyach anyone's food because people knew who the great Rabbi Yosi was. And Adrenuhu is Adruhu Belagi Vitsoye. All of the people, they came to Rabbi Yosi and they gave him jars of honey and they gave him platters of cooked dishes. And Baruch Hashem, he had what to eat and what to drink. So Amalei Rabbi Yehuda now criticizes him back. He shines the mirror on him. He says, Aniki pachti yasaroya. I deprived one shepherd. You, very nice, Yashikoyach, you didn't eat with me. So what did you do now? Now you deprived the whole city from all of their sweet foods that they gave to you. And the message, I think this is all leading up to, is that once a person's vision is deteriorating, every minute counts. And even if you're not going to die, but the amounts that you'll need later is much more. Nip it in the bud, we say in English. Bite it. Another story. Now, being that we spoke about trips, the next story is not about bulmus, but this is a phenomenal story. There was another time that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, Hava, Ka'azli, Be'urcha, they were going on a trip. Now we're making a statement that Rav Meir, Hava, Doyet, Bishma. Rav Meir would examine the name of a potential host, of any person with whom he might have interacted with, and through the name, he would understand who the person is. And Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, at that time in their lives, they made no such examinations. Now, when they came to a certain location, and they needed a place where to lodge. So in that Motel 6, or the Hilton, or whatever it is, there, mom and pop. So you have to know who is the innkeeper. Is Yahavuluhu. So the people in the city told these Tanoim where to go. Over there's an inn. And when they came to the destination, Amrullah, they asked the balabas of the inn, Ma Shimcha, whom's are you? What's your name? Amrullahu, my name is Kidoir. So Rav Meir said in his mind, Shmami no Adam Rashuhu. But Azad Naman. Why? Kidoir. Yeah. Shenema in Hazinu. Now he put words together. Kidoir ta'apucha ishema. Right? They are a generation of reversals. Now really, the Hemshech HaPasuk, right? Banim loy emun. They're not trustworthy. So he stayed in the inn, but today you have a safe in your room that you think is safe. There, the safe was with the innkeeper that you thought was safe. So people would deposit their valuables with the innkeeper. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi Ashli Mulei Kisayu. They gave the innkeeper their purse. And this is before Shabbos, as we'll see. Rav Meir, because doyet bishma, kidoir tapuch isema, loy, don't trust them. So Rav Meir he did not entrust them with the wallet, but to leave the wallet in the room, that's a vada, it's going to get stolen. That was a non-option. So what did he do? He's oisvei bekivrei da avua. He went to the cemetery. Mistama, the inn's backyard, had a shtickle section, Mistama, of cemetery, and he felt which part of earth is the part of earth that the innkeeper will respect the most. His father's grave. So he buried it on top of the innkeeper's father's grave. Secure. Problem was, it wasn't that secure, because just like Kidoid was Taka Russia, who do you think he learned it from? From his dad. The guy's dad was a Russia. He was such a Russia that he came from Gehenim to the dream of his son to tell his son, my Tatala son, there is money on my grave. Chaparain. Here's what's going on over there. Is Achzalei Bechelme. The father appeared to the host in the dream, and he told his son, To, Shakil Kise, go grab the purse. The Manachadesha that's on my head. Oh man, can you imagine? Now, what happened is that the innkeeper didn't know if it's worthwhile to trouble himself. So for some reason, he shared the dream. So Lamachar, Amar Lahu, he shared maybe with his friends, and they heard it. Chavra de Chavra, maybe he felt he's going to share it with them and to see how they react. That Hachis Chazoyle Bechalmoi, that I had a dream. My father told me that there's a purse on top of him. So Amri Lei, they told him, Chelma de Beishimshei. Beishimshei Rashi says a Friday night dream, less Luhum Amasha, has no meaning. We didn't have this, if I'm not mistaken, over there in the sugya of Chaloimis in Horoye in Brachos. Rashi writes as a concept that since a person Friday night is bimenucha, once a person relaxes, their mind wanders all over the place, and it has no meaning. So they put a doubt in the mind of the innkeeper. But you know what Rav Meir thought? The doubt is only good to buy him time. Rav Meir spent the rest of the Shabbos over there in the Beis HaKvaris to make sure that the innkeeper doesn't get his wallet. Mustama, there was something that there was a Rebbe dollar in the wallet. There was something of great value that justified for Rav Meir to spend the Shabbos there. Azal Rabbi Meir v'notrei kula Yoma. He guarded it. There's nothing wrong with that. But he spent his Shabbos in the vicinity of this guy's father's grave to make sure that no one digs it up. And va'aisei l'machad. L'machad means Motzoi Shabbos. Motzoi Shabbos, he took his wallet. So Rav Meir has his wallet. Oh, I'm sorry, va'aisei nekuda le'machar after Shabbos. Amruloi, the other two Tanoim, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi, they went to the innkeeper and they told him, Havlan Kison, please give us back our wallets. So Amar Lahu says, the innkeeper, guys, this is a Motzoi Shabbos story. Lahadam, I don't know who you are, and ich weiß garnished. Amar Lahu Rav Meir, and now Rav Meir turns to his colleagues and he tells him, Amai loy dai kisu bishma, why didn't you examine it? You should have known that from his name, Kidoy. So Amrulay, and they counter-criticized Rav Meir. They told him, Amai loy amrat lanmar, why didn't you tell us to distrust him? Was if you took your own precautions, where's your Avos Yisrael? So Amar Lahu, Rav Meir gave a Gavaldik response. He told him that Amar, the Amri Ana, all I had the right to tell myself is a chashash. I suspected him. Dayik bishma is not empirical evidence. You can't condemn a person because of his name. Rav Meir felt for it to be lashon hara. You're not right. You can't speak about that guy. You don't know who he is. He suspected for himself. But achzuke mi amrinon, you can't be machzikim to be a rasha, to be a ganef. So you have to know yourself that you should be dayik bishma and use it according to your ruach hakodesh. Okay, so now the kids they have a problem. They want their wallets back, and they have to get it out of the innkeeper. So what did they do? Is first of all mashchu va'ilul lechanusa. They had a fabrengen with him. Chanusa doesn't mean a store; it means a bar. And they were hoping that after drinking together, they're going to get him to make a statement and they're going to catch him. What happened was even better. Even before they needed to drown this guy in l'chaim, chazu, as they're interacting with him, they saw that tolfachei asafami, that there were lentils on his mustache, which means that they knew what he ate for lunch or what he ate for dinner. He ate lentils. So what did they do? They went and they told this man's wife that your husband asked you to give us those wallets, and just to prove that we are coming from your husband as a simon, he told us something that only you two guys know, that you guys had lentils for the last meal. And taka, no one else was going to know that. So it sounded to her that this is a good simon, that the husband sent them to retrieve their wallets, and v'shaklu likisai, and they got their wallets back, and they were good. And va'aisu, they confronted the innkeeper. They told the innkeeper, you see, your wife gave you bistaganif. So Azal Iu went to the innkeeper v'kat leila itse, and he killed his wife. And on that, Haino the Tanan or Haino the Tanya, this is the story. The Braisa says that on the account of someone not washing mayim rishonim, washing before eating, that brought about in a certain time hechilu basar chazir. That person was fed non-kosher food. So Rashi tells us that b'chlal there's an isur on yidin selling treifa food, but We're speaking about a time, it was a time of persecution, and a person had a business, he had a restaurant, and he would sell non-kosher food. But what he would do is, whoever would wash their hands the way we wash before eating, that would be the way that the balabayas would know, here's a Jew, and he would feed that person kosher food. In other words, it was a kosher restaurant in disguise. And if you didn't wash mayim rishonim, so the innkeeper, the owner felt, you're not Jewish. So the story was that there was a yid, but he was not nedagdik and mayim rishonim. And when he went into that restaurant and he didn't wash his hands properly, so the owner felt that's not Jewish and he gave him non-kosher food. So the Brisa says, on the account of mayim rishonim, or the lack thereof, someone ate basar chazir. On the account of someone not using mayim achronim, which is our story, kidoir hargu sanefesh, someone was killed, and that was kidoir's wife. Now, what happened after this? Ulabasoiv, that Hava Daiki Vishma, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi learned that this is the way to go. Our names have meaning. You get to know someone by their names. And therefore, and later, Kimatalu Beisa, they once came to a home, and the owner of the home's name was Bala. So there, Loi Ailu Ligabe, they bechlal didn't enter there. Because they say, Shmamino Rashahu. What's the issues connected to Bala? Because it says, Va'oimar lebala neufim. I had said to the one who has become worn out through adultery, like we have, if your goyres acharei beloisi, this is sort of speaking, that after I have become worn out from age, hoisuli edna, will I have delicate skin? We're just using the word bala as worn out, and coming back over here, that is zikna b'neufim. So this is a home in which people got old because of a tremendous amount of promiscuity that was going on over there, and for that, they bechlal didn't enter. It's interesting. When it came to Geneva, they entered. Rav Meir entered. He's a ganef. He made sure that he doesn't see his wallet. But when it comes to an environment where there's neufim, they bechlal did not enter. Oh, so since we have time, so now let's go to the next case that the Mishnah spoke about. After the Bulmus, the next case was someone that was bitten by a kelev shoita. Here, clearly, there's a machlokes tanoim. The Chachamim hold that ein machilin oisoi mechatzar kavet, because they felt this not to be a proven scientific remedy. And Abmasya ben Chodesh says, yes, matir, it's going to potentially heal the illness. Now, what type of illness are we talking about? So again, today, maybe many people will call being bitten by a mad dog, rabies or other types of bacterias. And as we'll see, that aside of the Gashmias, there is a ruchnias dike element which is that much more dangerous. How do you identify a dog to be a mad dog? So here we go. 5 simanim. You need all 5 of them. Pith pasuach. The mouth of the dog is open the whole time. And the saliva is dripping. He's drooling. And the ears are dropping. And the tail is resting on the dog's hind legs. It's not up, it's hanging down. And it's not walking with confidence. It's walking over there on the sides of the roads. And the yesh oimrim, another sign, that when this dog barks, no sound comes out. Now, mimai hava, what brought about the illness in the dog? So there's a machlokes, only in the Gemara, a machlokes. Rav Amar, nashim kashfaniyos mesachkos by, that there were sorcerers that were practicing their black arts on the dog, and as a result, the dog became a kelev shoita. However, Shmuel says, yes, but there's some other problem here, that ruach ra shoyla olav, that there is an evil spirit resting on the mad dog. And it was perhaps the evil spirit that brought about this physical kelev shoita. Says the Gemara, my benai, why do I care if the dog became mad or sickly because kishuv was done on it, or whether an evil spirit is resting on it? So the Gemara says, no, ika benai, there is a huge difference, daf pei dalet, and that is lemikdele b'davar hanizra. Now, guys, this dog has to be killed, has to be put down. That's the nusach in English. Question is, how do you do it? So if the dog became a kelev shoita only because of kishuv, then there should be no fear of touching the dog. Nothing will happen to you. If you're not bitten by the dog, shalom al Yisrael. or put a mask on the dog today, and Yishalom al Yisrael. But if there is a ruach ra, then if you touch the dog, then the ruach ra can go into the person. So you have to kill it, but you can only kill it by throwing something on it. Like Rashi writes on top, that Shmuel, that ruach ra shelo olav is lo yikrav elav lo harge biyadayim. Don't touch it. Elo zoyrik by chaitz, throw an arrow, throw a knife, stay a distance. And the Gemara says, Tanya Kavasa the Shmuel, that when you kill a kalav shaita, ein hargenoisoi elo b'davar nizrak, only with something that can be thrown. Why is that here? Because the Baraisa clearly regarding a kalav shaita, because if only, even only the choyav bay, if you are only rubbed by it, the dog rubbed by your leg, there's no biting, there's no saliva, you are in danger. And furthermore, if you are bitten, then achas leimoyis. I will stop over here, and God willing, we'll leave it in the middle. We're going to go continuing with learning remedies. And even though the Braisa says that if someone is bitten by a mad dog, they will die, Chazal had a remedy for that as well. God willing, to be continued.
Yeah.
Next. One more. Guys.
Great shiur.
When's the next?
Huh?
When is the next shiur?
The next shiur will be, God willing, Monday morning at 6:00.
No, right now, Mayan. Right now.
Double daf.
Yeah. Machai, this is Motzoi Shabbos dafim. The ending will get us, but by then it's too late. You're in already. The beginning, the hemshech will be gavaldik. All right. Chavra, with the help of Hashem, we are learning Yoma Daf Pei Dalid. We began the sugya of the Kelef Shoita. We had on the Mishnah on Daf Pei Gimel, the Machloikes Tanoim, regarding the remedy of feeding one that was bitten by a Kelef Shoita with the Kelef Shoita's liver lobe. And the Chachamim felt that that's not the remedy enough. It's not a proven remedy that will justify a Yid eating non-kosher. Rav Masya ben Chodesh says it is. So we're going to continue more about the Kelef Shoita. We also learned that Shmuel holds that a Kelef Shoita can be a dog that is sick because of it being connected to some sort of evil spirit, which makes the Kelef Shoita that much more dangerous. And we just learned the Baraisa that says that even only having any physical contact with the Kelef Shoita, including you're only rubbed by it, you are in danger. So we're going to learn about remedies for that. From there, we're going to go into the next case in the Mishnah on Daf Pei Gimel that spoke about someone whose throat is hurting. And we already mentioned Bekitzir, and now we will elaborate. There's an illness that's called the Tsefidna ailment. And we're going to learn in the Gemara here about its cure. And we will have to, we're going to have to clarify whether the Machloikes of Tanoim in the Mishnah, that was clearly about someone that was bitten by the Kelef Shoita, whether they can have its own liver, that liver, whether the Chachamim also argue with the next clause in the Mishnah that spoke about someone who's suffering with Sefidna, that the Mishnah says that you can be Machal Shabbos Mido Eiraisa to cure yourself, which was a novelty, as we'll repeat, because the ailment begins with something that's very not life-threatening, but it might develop into some sort of inner organ infection, etc. So you have to nip it on its bud now and be Machal Shabbos if you need Midai Raisa. We're going to have, my friends, an unbelievable story of how the cure to Tsefidna was extracted by people that kept remedies secretive, and Bachlal, the importance that we have as Jews to make sure that it's public knowledge, not to monopolize any remedies. If there's a remedy out there, we have a chiyuv to put it on the internet for free for everyone to see how to heal one from an illness. And the Gemara is going to make these powerful statements that when one's life is in danger, and therefore we're Machal Shabbos, and we're being Makayim Shabbos by breaking the Shabbos. So ein oisim devarim halalu. Don't say that if there's a goy available, so then minimize it, do whatever needs to be done through a nachri or do it through a minor. It has to be done al yedei gedolei Yisrael. And from there, we're going to go into the last case of the Mishnah about mefakhin pikuach nefesh b'Shabbos. We're speaking about when a building collapsed. We're going to have the big statement that we don't follow the majority when it comes to pikuach nefesh. We're going to challenge that statement me'inyan le'inyan of what should one do when, God forbid, a abandoned child is found on the street. We're speaking here about yichus. Can we presume the child is Jewish? Should we presume the child is not Jewish? These are tragic occurrences. And it appears that over there we do follow Roiv. We're going to see how we reconcile. And some of that Braisa will also affect Pikuach Nefesh or being Machalal Shabbos to save that child, etc. And if we'll have time, we're going to go a little bit into Daf Pei. Hey, I want to chaparayim because these dafim are becoming humongous, and we're going to review some fundamental laws, B'negei Din and Nizakin, and the difference in halacha between, let's say, if a Jewish animal damages someone else's personal property, and all of the unique dinim that you have of a tam and of a muad, versus that God's rules regarding what happens if a non-Jewish animal damages someone else's personal property, and a lot more. We are starting 4 lines from the top of the Amar on Daf Pei Dalet. We just quoted the Braisa that, like Shmuel connected a kelef shoita with at least a potential endowment of a ruach ra'ah that we want to stay away from. And even though you have to kill the kelef shoita, don't even touch it. Kill it by throwing something on it. And the Braisa mentioned that if someone is even just brushed by the kelef shoita, that person's life is in danger. So says the Gemara, now Gemara, the beginning of the 4th line, is taka the choyev bei mistake, and the Braisa says that if you're only brushed by a kelef shoita, your life is in danger. So my takante, so what should you do? These are Talmudic remedies, esoteric remedies now. Is nishlach money, remove your clothing. The Bach adds, vinishdinu kamei, throw your clothing in front of the dog, and then run away. Vinidit. And now the Ruach Ra effect is good, went away from you. Story. Rav Huna bereded Rabbi Yeshua. Indeed, one time, Chaf Bei Chad Min Nayu Bishuka, there was a kelef shoita that rubbed against him in the market, and he did it. Shalchinu l'monei. So we're speaking about an amoira in public. You got to protect your life. Comes first. He removed his clothing, and here the Bach again adds this detail. It's not just removing your clothing, but throw your clothing in front of that kelef shoita and then run away. And he was saved. And Omar, he said, like we had on the last daf, that kiyamti ba'atzmi, I just fulfilled it myself. Ha-chochma techaya ba'aleh. So he had this, he was the possessor of this chochma, and Imamish gave him life. Next, going back to the Braisa we had above, that if the nachis lay, which means if a person, God forbid, is bitten by a kelef shoita, moyes, then they'll die. So my takante, that's a beautiful premise. Not okay, moyes. No, okay. If moyes, how do we circumvent that? So Amar Abaye, again, this is a esoteric remedy. Neisei mashcha da apa de dichra. Bring the skin of a male polecat. Good luck on not dying catching the polecat. You got to get a polecat, you got to kill the polecat, you got to skin the polecat, take its hide. And the nichtav alei, and write on it, ano, write I, and write your name, Planya. And when it comes to the boys, we go not the son of the father, but the son of the mother. Bar Planya.
Excuse me, what's a polecat?
Bar Planya.
What's a polecat?
What's a polecat? We're going to have Kavan that's going to make a Google, and he's going to show you a picture of a polecat.
My translation over here says leopard.
A leopard. I strongly advise you.
Bobcat.
Polecat. Okay, right.
Bobcat.
Huh?
Bobcat.
A bobcat, if that helped. It didn't help me. Good, to me, it's all the same thing. And what do? And write on Ana Planya Planya. And you're writing on the hide that Amashka da Apadichra Kasivna Allah. I'm writing about you, evil spirit, on the skin of the polecat. What am I writing? Conti Kaliros. Here we go. Or Amachloikis. Don't write that. Write candy Kaliros. And then you conclude Yutke, Hashem Tzuvakos. Right, God is the master of the legions. Amen, Selah. And now you still have to go through the step of getting rid of your clothing. Then Ashlichu Lamane. Oh, 1 second, we're not done yet. It's different. Here you have to remove your clothing. And bury it in the grave. For how long? Just the clothing. For 12 months. Now this is good because this means you're going to live for 12 months. And after 12 months, v'nafkinu, remove it from the grave, v'niklinu b'tanura, burn it in an oven, v'nevadrinu lekimte, and scatter their ashes aparashas derachim, at a crossroads. And the Hanoch Teresa Yarchi Shata, during these 12 months, Kishasa Maya, whenever you drink water, being that there's still a kesher between the Suruach Ra and this person Nebach. And there are certain things that you can't see when you look directly. But when you look in a mirror, and then when you look into water, you can see the reflection of these evil spirits. So you want to make sure that you don't look at, so if this would have been written now, it would tell you for those 12 months, never look in a mirror. Because if you would see it, you would go meshuga like we had in the beginning of brachas. You would lose your mind from fear. But the problem is that forget about a mirror. That Tosfos says, B'chala man le'silbash. What we're speaking about, you drink water, you're going to see your reflection in the water. So you have to drink water with a straw. Like this, you're far away from the water and you're not going to see the reflection. So don't drink water, only with a copper straw. You will see, it doesn't mean dafka copper. Before they made plastic illegal, it could be with plastic, it can be with paper. It just means don't put your face to the water. Stay far away from the water, because dilma chazi bebua deshida, you might see in the reflection, you might see the demon, and just seeing a shade vilistake, that in itself will put you into danger. But you know what? It's only for 1 year. And kiha, and again, Amaisa, this actually was done. Kiha the Abba Bar Marta, who is also sometimes known as Abba Bar Manyume, that of the Le'ime Gufsa de Dahava. He was Nebach bitten by this Kelef Shoita, and his mother, Amama, she didn't make him a copper straw, she made him a golden straw. But the point was that during the year in which his clothing were rotting in the ground, before he had the chance to do the final step, he stayed away from any sort of self-reflection. Okay, weiter. Going back to the Mishnah Daf Samach Gimel, that when there's a pain in the throat, right, as we mentioned, then you are allowed to be Mechalel Shabbos Midoiraisa, because if you don't treat it now, it might become a life-threatening illness. And here again, Rabbi Yochanan, as we had in the last daf, that Rabbi Yochanan once suffered with bulmus. Rabbi Yochanan once chosh bitzefidna, which is this ailment that we're talking about, beginning with the teeth and with the gums. If not treated, it goes down into the body, into the intestines. Ozel Gabo, Dahi Matronisa, when he got ill, he knew that there was a certain noble woman in the region. She had a remedy, and the ingredients she kept a secret. It was patented. And of the Milsa, say that, but she was available. So he goes to this noble woman. She made him the remedy on Chamshah, Rashi says, on Thursday. He went to treatment on Thursday. Now, this is a remedy that you have to take a few days in a row. So he went there Thursday, good. And then he went there back Friday, Yomali Shabbos. But now, being that we keep Shabbos, so Amar Allah, Shabbos, what should I do on Shabbos? So Amar Alei, so she told him that by now, Koydem Kol, probably Loy Tzarich. You're not going to need it on Shabbos. But Rabbi Yochanan, and if I'll need it, if I'm still going to be feeling that's a fitna, so I mitzrachina mai, and she understood that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't want to be Machal Shabbos to go to her, even though he would have been allowed to do so. What Rabbi Yochanan was trying to get out of her is how you make it. So Amr Olei, before she revealed the secret, she tells Rabbi Yochanan, Ishtabali, swear to me, the loy megales, that you will not reveal how to make the remedy, and I'll share it with you. So what did Rabbi Yochanan do? Ishtaba, he made the following oath, and now we're quoting his oath verbatim, that leloka di Yisrael loy megalena, to the God of Israel, I will not reveal. Now you have to know where to put the comma. Is it, I'm swearing to the God of Israel that I won't reveal it to anyone, or I won't reveal it to the God of Israel? Rabbi Yochanan got the remedy. You know what he did? On Shabbos, by the shiur, he told the Gansa Oilam exactly the remedy. Nafak and Darsha Bepirka. I want you to know that there are two versions in the Yerushalmi. I'm going to speak about the positive version, that when she saw this happening, she converted. She was so impressed, because she always thought, why did she keep it a secret? Because that was her source of income. That's the money that you're making because you have the remedy. Why was she afraid to share it with Rabbi Yochanan? Because it would be a chutzpah for him to go ahead and for him to make money off her remedy. when she saw that Rabbi Yochanan, who wanted that much to get the way of making the remedy, did not do that for him to have an income. He did it be'emes, because if people are ill, everyone should know how to get healed. We're not allowed to charge money for teaching Torah. You have a remedy, don't make money. That's something that everyone should have access. She was so impressed with that ethic that she became Jewish. The problem is, how did he break his oath? So he swore. So the Gemara says, what he swore was, I won't tell it to God. What he actually meant was, I will reveal it. But one second, but there's a Chilul Hashem. She didn't know that is what he meant. By the way, for people who say that Chilul Hashem is only when something is being done in the presence of 10 Jews, which is true, but if something is being done in the presence of Goyim, there's no Chilul Hashem. This is from the many stories in Chazal. It's not true. So yeah, when we go out there with our kids and we tell each other, don't make a Chilul Hashem, we are using that term correctly. It's Chilul Hashem. Once he took an oath, noch to a matronisa. So the Gemara says, no, right after he took the oath, he told her what he's going to do. It's no Chilul Hashem. She might have been angry, or she became very impressed, but right away, the megala la meikara. Now, when the Gemara finishes saying the story, the Gemara becomes curious. Okay, what was the big secret? What is the cure? The Gemara, what did she do? No, what's the cure? So here we go. One version is meisa'oid, yeast water, mixed with shemen zayis, with olive oil and salt. This is a paste that was smeared on the gums, on the teeth. Rabbi Yemer says, no, not meisa'oid. So oid gufa, it's yeast itself and shemen zayis umelach. Ravashi Yomar, mishcha de gatpa de avza, that it was the fat of a goose wing. I want to use this as an example. We spoke out on the last year, the Chedem Hakadmoinim, that when we learn remedies in the Gemara, we're not allowed to actually practice or use them because we probably will get it wrong, and then it won't work, and then we're going to think that Chazal didn't know how to heal. The words of Ravashi was the fat of a wing of a goose. I want to look inside the Rashi. This is a great example. Rashi says, Shuman moyach etzem kotem sheberoish kana fa'oif. What Ravashi really meant is that in the tip of the wings of this goose, there is a bone. In the bone, there is marrow. And you take that marrow, and Rashi writes, Sacha oisoi al tzeda'ov, which means that you smear it on one's temples. And many have a girsa in Rashi, that is what you smear on your gums. Giving a great example. The words that Ravashi says, the oil or the fat of the goose wing. Doesn't mean the fat of the goose wing. Yeah, it means that in the wing there's a bone. You have to know what bone. In the bone there's marech, and you got to take the marech. That is what he was talking about. Amar Abaye, I did all of this. V'lo yistasoy, didn't help me. The Amar Liyahu Tayyah. These Tayyim, they show up every now and then. These are either Arab merchants or it's some ruchniistic being that would appear to Chazal in the form of an Arab merchant. That this is what you need to do. I see kashiyasa de zesa. You got to take the pits of olives. What types of olives? The loy malutil said that they did not even mature a third, and you got to burn it. The kolinu benoida. But how do you make the fire? It's important that you should use amora chadato. So you have a plowing tool called a hoe. Get a hoe aside of the metal. You have the wood handle. Take the wooden handle of a hoe that was never used, and burn the olive pits of the premature olives on it, and that va'adbik bekoche dare, you should affix the ashes on the row of teeth, and that worked of the achi and the itasoi. Mimai have what brings about this illness? A couple of things. Number one, Rashi says, not drinking cold, hot, by having very hot bread, or so they had this fried fish, right, that they would hash in flour and its own oil. Shirayim here means if it was left overnight and a person ate it, then they can become susceptible to this tzefidna. Umay simane, there are many other gum illnesses. How do you know that it's this? Kadrame midei bekache. if you put something in between your teeth and a lot of blood comes out. And from the ganzer row of teeth, there is blood, so it's some gum illness, tooth illness. And again, right now, it might not appear dangerous. Rav Mashya ben Chodesh says, no. Deal with it right now and be Machal Shabbos if you have to. Rabbi Yechanan, ki chash b'tzefidna. And l'chayda, that's the story above. And the remedy, Mistama, Wednesday and Thursday and Friday was not enough. So Avad Hachi b'Shapsa, he got put together the remedy on Shabbos and ve'itzi, and he got healed. How was he allowed to violate the Isur D'Oraisa? Amar Rab Nachman by Yitzchak, that Shani Tzefidna, true, when Rabbi Yechanan was ill, then his life was not in danger. But that is Tzefidna. Hoyul u'maschel b'pet begins only in the mouth. But if you don't nip it in the bud, v'goymer b'nei ma'ayin. B'nei ma'ayin is an internal organ. And therefore, you're Machalal Shabbos, or it's not even called Chilul Shabbos, you break the Shabbos in order to save life. Amalei Rab Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yechanan. Kiman. Now, this goes back to the Mishnah. It's beautiful. In the Mishnah, Naf Pei Gimel, clearly there's a machlekes regarding this liver lobe to someone that was bitten by a kelev shoita. Question is, the second illness that the Mishnah is speaking about, which is hachoy sheish begroinoi, which we're teaching now as tzefidna. Here, only Rab Masya said, put medicine in the person's mouth. Many people, when you learned the Mishnah, understood that's only Rab Masya. There's, again, a machlekes. Now, in other words, and the Chachamim will hold that putting some in the mouth is not allowed on Shabbos. So we are challenging, did Rabbi Yechanan paskin like a das yochid? What, come on? Kiramasya ben Chodesh, the Amar, hachoishish befiv, he is the one that says, Matilde loisam b'Shabbos, and l'chu'ura, the Havamina, the premise of the question is that the Chachamim disagree. So why are we not following the majority opinion? So Amalei, to which Rabbi Yechon, to which the Gemara responded, no, we're going to have a Braisa that we're going to learn in a moment. The Braisa makes it clear that bezu v'loy ba'acheres, that there is a place where the Chachamim argue with Rav Masya, but not here. And we understand that the hachoishish begroinoi sefidna, everyone agrees that you're Machalal Shabbos. So Rabbi Yechanan wasn't siding with the Das Yachid. Faket, there was no machlekes to begin with. And actually, Lema Misayele, to Rabbi Yechanan's understanding that the Chachamim agree that you are allowed to be Machalal Shabbos. It says in a Braisa, Misha Chaza Yeirok, and if a person is seized with jaundice, so Machil and Oisei B'sar Chamor. For some reason, B'sar Chamor, guys, donkey is treif, not kosher, is going to heal you. Eat that. And the point is, jaundice is considered life-threatening, to which the laws of kashrus are set aside. Mishanosh Rekel of Shoita, second case. That's the case, the first case in our Mishnah. So here, again, take the liver lobe from that kel of Shoita and give it to the victim of the bite. Third case, and here it says, Divrei Rav Masya ben Chodesh. If the Chachamim would have been arguing with all, they would have said, Ein b'hem mishum refuah. When they say be'elu, they are inferring sometimes, sometimes not. And it doesn't mean that all of the three mentioned here they argue with. And in another case, they agree. The Gemara understands be'elu means that from these three cases, some they argue, some they agree. Question is what? Be'elu l'mu'utei mai, and my love l'mu'utei sam, that they agree in the case of some, like Rabbi Yechanan. So the Gemara says no meaning maybe not, maybe l'ma'utei, a case that's not mentioned in this brayso. And what is that? If a person has siroichni is some sort of tonsillitis. And the remedies that they had then, at least according to the Masya ben Chodesh, was to have the person let blood. Bloodletting. Bloodletting on Shabbos is also midoiraisa unless there's a danger of life involved. It is here that even the Chachamim agree that we do let blood. That was considered the remedy. But maybe in all of the three of the Braisa, including Achoshesh Begroinoi, the Chachamim argue, which would be a problem for Rabbi Yechanan. And Hachanam Mistabra, the Tanya, Shlosh of the Vadim, Amar Mishmal Rabbi Yosi, that he heard in the name of Ramasi ben Chodesh, Makizin Dam Lisirechni b'Shabbos. Number 2, Mishanosh Rekel of Shoyte, Machil Noisem Chatzar Kovet Shaloi. Number 3, Vachoshesh Befiv Matil Leisham b'Shabbos. These are the 3 mentioned on the second to last line. And Vachachamim Oimrim Be'elu Ein Be'em Mishum Refuah. Again, the understanding is that they're not arguing fully. If not, they would just say Ein Be'em Mishum Refuah. Ein Oisen. Be'elu is Lama'ute Mai. And again, my lava tarta basraisa, ulemaute dereisha. So we said, no, that's also not a proof. Because no, maybe a tarta dereisha kamaisa, ulemaute de seifa, and Rabbi Yechanan is okay. Because Rabbi Yechanan has plenty to stand on, to lean on, that when it comes to hachoishish bigroinoi, there is no machlokes tanoim. So Rabbi Yechanan didn't paskin like a das yachid, he went l'kula alma, daf pei dalit, Amid base. Okay. And again, we're going to be another proof, Tashema, that Taka the Chachamim agree by a Choshesh Bigroinoi that Matilon Oisam says the Gemara. The Tani Rabba Bar Shmuel, they had the following Braisa. Back to what we learned 2 days ago, right? Ubara Sheherecha. If a woman who's pregnant smelled food and she senses, she feels a craving, and as we learned, even on Yom Kippur, Machil Noisei Achatosh of Nafsha. And Umishanosh Rekel of Shoite, Machil Noisei Mechatzar Kovet Shaloi. And number 3, Vachoshesh Befiv. That's our topic. Matil Noisam B'Shabbos. Who says this? Now we have another Tana mentioned, Divrei Rab Loser ben Rabbi Yosi, that says it in the name of Ramasi ben Chodesh. However, that's the statement we had on Amud Aleph. Bazu v'loy ba'acheres. I agree with this, but not with something else. Here, clearly, they're saying it's much stronger than be'elu ein behem mishum refuah. Here they're saying, clearly, I agree with this, and not with something else. Now, what is the interpretation of this brayso? Bizu ahaya ilema aubara. But the Chachamim have to say that they agree. A pregnant woman, mi ikal amanda amar deloy. No havamina. Ella, it's on the last one. Ella lav asam. No, they heard. The Kelev Shoita, listen, the first statement, Ubara, everyone agrees. When the second statement was, whoever was bitten by the mad dog, we know from our Mishnah, the Chachamim disagree. Then when they said the final statement, that you put Sam for HaChoshesh B'Groini, the Chachamim say, good, with this I agree. And indeed, Shmami, no, this is all good for Rabbi Yechanan. Rav Ashni Omar, you want to know something? Rabbi Yechanan is good. You don't have to find a Psa that was learned by Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Our Mishnah, Masnisa Namidaiko, because it says in our Mishnah, in our Mishnah, the Seder was first the case of Kelev Shoit. Second case was the case of Achoshesh B'Groine. So there was in Achoshesh B'Fiv Matil Shabbos, and the Mishnah does not record over here how the Chachamim, if they would have disagreed, and what was the premise of the challenge against Rabbi Yechanan? That the Chachamim disagree. So the Imi said the Rabban Alei. So why did the Mishnah separate it in 2 clauses? Le'arvinu v'letninu. The Mishnah should have written both cases together. For a person that was bitten by a Kelev Shoita, give him from the liver. For a person Choshesh B'Groino, you are allowed to produce some, even if it's Chilul Shabbos Midoraisa. Divrei Ramasi ben Chodesh. V'chachamim oimrim. Why didn't you do that? The lift the Gurabanan b'Seifa on everything. Fakir, the Mishnah left the machlekes only to the case of someone that was bitten by a Kelev Shoita. Because on the second case of the Mishnah, there is no machlekes, and this fully, Shmamina, it's not subject to an argument, all explaining why Rabbi Yechanan, following everyone's opinion, broke rules that normally would have been Chilul Shabbos to heal his illness, even though, again, l'chayra, it was already on the 3rd day. You can argue, wait another day, you don't do that. Now, the Mishnah on Pei Gimel, appeared very repetitive. The Mishnah says, Mepnei shesafek nefashos, and the whole safek nefashos doiches haShabbos. Why do we have to write all these words? That's the Gemara. Mepnei shesafek nefashos. So good, enough. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, I'll tell you what the Mishnah means to add. That loy safik Shabbos ubelvad amru. Ella afilu safik Shabbos acheres, which means that if a person is ill right now, for sure, this Shabbos, even untreated, the person will live. You're doing something right now to further guarantee that next Shabbos, the person should not be in a life danger. There is no immediacy right now. Even here, be machalal this Shabbos. And Heichi Dami gives a great example. A person was ill, and he went to a doctor, and the amduya latamna yomi, and the doctor assesses this patient that the treatment, obviously it's a treatment that involves normally chilul Shabbos. You'll have to do this for 8 days. And let's say it's Friday afternoon, and the Yoma Kama is Shapsa. The first day is, which means that if you're going to begin the treatment ASAP, so guys, Shabbos, you're going to be mechal 2 Shabbos. If the patient is going to say, you know what, let me begin the treatment on Sunday. This Shabbos, I'm not dying. And like this, I'll only, break 1 Shabbos. That's the point of the Mishnah. Don't even do that. Until after Shabbos. An example, you heat up water on Shabbos. And that's, my friends, that's pure breaking of the lamates malachas, making a fire. Whether it is because you want to give the patient something warm, you want to strengthen him by bathing him or her in hot water. And more, the Braisa adds, meaning, they don't say, you know what, why do we have to bathe the patient? Let's wait. Don't bathe the patient. What's the worst case scenario? Motzei Shabbos, we'll see, oh my God, the fever went back up. Okay, so then continue the treatment after Shabbos. No, we don't. And not only that, which is as we mentioned above. It justifies breaking 2 Shabbos. Another thing, whenever halacha says life trumps the lamates malachas, don't think that if there is an option of having a goy do something, do it through a goy. No, don't do it al yedei nachri. V'loy al yedei, and here the gra amends ketanim. No, ella al yedei gedoyle Yisrael. And look inside the top toisvus. Ella gedoyle Yisrael. Vafilu heicha de efsher benachri. There you have an option. Amiru la'akom, even the Alter Rebbe, even if it's shlichus, it's not on the level of the Oraisa. Mitzvah be Yisrael. Why? Shema yisatzel anachri. V'lo yaseh. In the Yovel they sakana. Back inside the Gemara, which is a Braisa. The ein oimrim. Now, guys, I'm going to read this the way the Rosh reads this. The ein oimrim that lo ye'osu halolu al pinashim. Don't say that if a woman was the one that determined that this person needs to get a remedy, that we don't follow what she's saying. We don't say that. And the loyal yidei kutim. Don't say it's a non-Jew who's the doctor. We can't rely on him. We rely on him. That's the Rashi's Girsa. Now we're going to read this in Rashi's Girsa. And Rashi's Girsa is very challenging, and I'll explain it in a moment. So Rashi is saying, "Ve'ein oimrim yasu devar malalu, ve'ein oimrim yasu devar malalu, loy al pi nashim loy al pi kutim." Zakt Rashi, 13 lines on top of the Amid, that im nashim oy kutim oimrim tzarech. If the opposite of the Rosh, that if a woman or a non-Jew is saying that this patient needs the remedy for which you have to do what you would call chilul Shabbos, ein mechalal and alpiyam, cannot rely on them. Elo mitztarfen ladas acheres, taiches Rashi, which is again something we learned a few daf ago, which is problematic. That when you need to have numbers, which means Rashi gives an example. 2 doctors say that the person needs the remedy right now. 3 doctors say they don't need. Rashi's understanding of this braisa is that we will follow deos. So if it's 2 against 3, 3 trumps. 3 are saying no remedy, no chilul Shabbos. Here, if a woman or a goy are saying that the person needs, that will even out the playing field. Now it's 3 against 3, and you're mechalel Shabbos. And that by this machlokes, how to read the Baraisa, is very significant. Very significant. And again, the Rosh, who's writing halacha, has another version. The Rosh's understanding is mamish the opposite. Now, you don't need to have someone who normally is only a kosher witness, someone who otherwise is not a kosher witness, a woman halachically, or a kuti. When it comes to this, if someone here who's saying, the expert, that this person needs the remedy, you have to follow what they're saying. Let's go weiter. And now the Gemara is going to turn really to the third case that we had on the Mishnah Daf Pei Gimel, and that is an example of being Mechalel Shabbos, that if God forbid, if a building collapsed on people, Tanach Rabbanan, Mefakrin Pikuach Nefesh B'Shabbos. We tend to matters even if it's going to be breaking the Shabbos. So for example, and like we learned above, whoever is quicker is praiseworthy. Don't think you have to get Rishus from Bezdin. If you understand that there's Pikuach Nefesh, do right away what needs to get done. I'm sorry, Mefakrin Pikuach Nefesh is not just about a collapsed building. Let's go through the examples. If someone witnessed a child, God forbid, falling into the ocean, and you have access right now to nets, Poirish Mitsuda, spread out the net, Umaleyu, and Vahazoras Areis Meshubach. Now, then the Baraisa adds, and you don't need to ask Rishus for Basin. What the Baraisa is hinting to something. We're hinting about the way that Ran learns. Why does he have a net? He's a fisherman. And when he's going to put his nets out, he knows that with the child, God willing, you'll save the child, you'll also catch fish. The Ran says he's allowed to have kavana also for the fish. And it's not a problem, because since the act of spreading out the nets you're doing to save a life, even the Ran says, even if you have kavana to trap fish, not only will it happen, but that is your kavana as well, you're good to go. Saving life. So your Danny's looking, it's like it's not a nice lush, and you're piggybacking on that.
You're saving the kid that's drowning, and at the same time you're thinking about catching fish. That's what he's saying.
If you're saving the kid anyways, you might as well chop a carp. You make a suda soida, you're already chopping, I don't know. Okay, next case. The Gemara will explain why the Bryce has to give all these cases. But it's the concept we get, that if God forbid you witness a child falling into a pit, that sometimes the way you will descend to the pit, it's difficult. If it's too perpendicular, you yourself might not get out. You create like a step. That means you clear out the rim. You make a way to go down to the tzmamish boina. And the quicker the better. And here nachamo, the ain sarach little rishus me bezdin, aflagav them a second darga. And here again, the way that even though that your kavana is you're doing something that you know you will benefit. Now you made a step going down into the pit, and you know what you're doing it good. You're doing it to save the kid. Another example, you saw how a child became trapped in a room. There's a door. You break down the door. And by the way, it's not that common that we find in Chazal value given to emotions. Normally it's measurable. Here we're speaking about a child whose life, so to say, what's the danger? The danger is that when a child feels trapped, then the child is under emotional distress. And yes, emotional distress can make one's life be in danger. It's not that common, but that will be an example. And here again, again, what's the chiddush? You need firewood. The door is perfect. Now, you're not going to break it into pieces on Shabbos, but breaking down the door is the first step that you will use to further break it down into pieces for firewood. Doesn't matter that you are benefiting from it. According to the Ran, that can be your kavanah. I'm saving the kid. I'm chopping a rein already. It doesn't matter. Save the child. And the final case of the Braisa, mechabin, that you can extinguish a fire, or umafsikin, you can block the fire from spreading. Obviously, that's only when there is a suffix of life. Guys, we learned so many times in Shabbos that we're not allowed to put the fire out. That's because if a person lives alone, far away from neighbors, and you don't have trees that connect your house to the other, and everyone in your house, thank God, is out of the house, no pikuach nefesh, then the house has to burn. Here we're speaking about a case with more details that if you don't put it out here, it might spread, it might, you put it out. And here again, the ain't tzarich litul reshus mi beis. Va'af al gav the common mayich mi kuvei or mi kuchei. Even though that one of the, if the medium that you are using to block the fire from spreading is flattening out the coals, and that is going to be to your advantage. That Motzei Shabbos you're going to already have as a flattened out stovetop. Whatever you're doing, you will use after Shabbos, and you know and you intend to do that. So what? You have to stop the fire. So do what you need to do to save life. And now the question is, why did the Baraisa have to give all these examples? So Zak the Gemara v'tzricha, because the Ashmeinen, only the first case of Yoma, child fell into the sea. Here we get it. Every moment counts. If you're not going to immediately jump in after the child to throw your net in, is God forbid, the child will be lost. Aval boy, but if a child fell into a pit, he's sitting in the pit. Aim away. Sarichma. Again, his life is not in danger. Furthermore, at least in the boy, like we mentioned, he's frightened. It's emotional distress. And here is an example again that emotional distress in such an extreme case where a young child is in a pit puts his life in danger. Let me just finish reading this. But if a door is what's trapping a child, separating you from him, here at least he's not in a pit. And maybe don't break the door down, sit on the other side, talk to the child, play with the child, distract the child. Don't be Mechal Shabbos. Efshir, the Yosef Lebe Haigi. So sit on the other side. Umeshabish Lebe Amguze. An example. Tell the kid to play nuts. Figure out how to play a game with the child. So it's easier. The emotional distress is not on the same madrega. Even here, the Baraisa says, "Be Mechal Shabbos." Yeah, Kevin, what are you asking?
Right, there's no emotional distress for children to watch a house burn down.
You can't compare that. No, when a child is him or herself in a pit trapped, how can you compare? Or trapped in a room. Whoever went to that
standing outside watching your house burn down. That's okay.
That's not emotional distress of you being trapped. That's witnessing your house being burnt down. That's not. That's why. Listen, I can tell you like this, Kevan, that these are really exceptional cases because the moment you go into the world of emotions, it's very difficult to draw a line in the sand. So difficult to quantify and to monetize. And indeed, we say this in Bava Kama, that from the 5 damages, one is boishes, and it's limited to boishes. And all these emotional distress claims that you have in today's secular world is something that generally is not found in halacha. Not because it doesn't exist, because many times, how do you quantify it? How do you monetize it? And here at least we have over here, clearly, Kevin, the issue with the house burning down is not enough emotional distress that makes the child's life in danger, and being trapped in a pit or even behind the door in a closet, God forbid, that's, even though the child hears your voice, that's danger. Let's go back. The last one is Mechabin. You can put the fire out, or Mafsikin, you can block the fire from spreading. So here, Lamali, why do we need that? So the answer is the Gemara, because like we spoke out, even if in this courtyard no one will die, no one is home, everyone ran out of the houses. But if you're living, like in the modern life, that means in a city living, one house is close enough to the neighboring house where there's at least a potential for the fire to jump from house to house. Here, you can't say, well, everyone in this block is safe. If you're not going to contain it now, it might go to another chutzner. And there it might kill someone. Put it out right now. Amar Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Shmuel. Here we go. We have time. Beautiful. Loi holchu b'pikuach nefesh achar haroif. Yes, following the majority is a biblical concept, not by pikuach nefesh. Now, how do we apply the statement of Shmuel? It's not so simple. Frek the Gemara. Exactly, tell me, Heichidami. And I want to just go back to the case of a collapsed building. And what we're saying now is not halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa mishum eva. We make no difference between a yid, we'll just use the names on the internet, and a kuti. But according to the Iker Din Torah, Mechilol Shabbos is only allowed to be done to save a Nefesh Yehudi. So here we go with the cases. Hey Chidami, name of the Ikatisha Yisrael v'kuti yachad beinayu. What happens if there was a building, and in the building you had 9 Yisraelim and 1 kuti, and the building collapsed? In other words, the Roiv are Yidden. So of course, even if we would have to follow Roiv, you have to attend to going through the debris on Shabbos. Rubad Yisrael, we don't need Shmuel for that. So now Ella or Inema, we have in the side over here that the case of Shmuel is Palga. Again, I don't need Shmuel, because just because of the other rule that we know already, that Safek Nefasha is Lahakel, 50-50, it might be a Yid. Ella, the case of Shmuel must be L'chayra, that there were 9 Kutim and there was 1 Yisrael. And if we would have followed the general Torah rule of majority, then we would say that we don't know Roiv Kutim, which does not again justify the Chilul Shabbos. But the Gemara says no, I still don't need Shmuel. Why is that Onami Pshita? Because to have a Kvua. But guys, remember the rule of Kvua? We had this in Pesachim the last time. The case of the mice with the chametz. So you have Kvua, Merca. Only called the Parish, Miruba Parish. So Kvua means that if they live in the building and the building collapsed, halachically, we always view it as 50-50. And again, based on the known rule prior to Shmuel, that Safek, Nefashis, Lahakil, I don't need Shmuel to give me a statement. So finally, the case of Shmuel is needed, that the Parush Lochatzan Acheres. So 10 people live in building A, and 10 is 9 Kutim and 1 Yisrael. And they went to building B. And as they're visiting building B collapses. So Mao the Tema, based on the principle that when something leaves its fixed location, when something is Parush, we say Meruba Parush. Since they came from the building A that had 9 Kutim, so halacha should determine that if someone is trapped, it's a Kuti. That says Shmuel. Since there was 1 Yisraeli, maybe it's a Yid. Go through the debris on Shabbos. But that's not correct. Because for Amar Abasi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, clearly our case, Tisha Kutim, the Yisrael Echad, if the building collapsed in their building, then indeed Mefakhin, based on the principle that we just spoke out, Kol Kavua, Kemertzal Mertzal. But if B'chatzar Acheres, the 9 Kutim and 1 Yid live in block A, if they went visiting block B and block B, God forbid, collapsed, then they Mefakhin. Rabbi Yechanan. So Gemara says Gavaldik. Like Ash, the case of Shmuel was the Parish Kulhu. All of the 10 residents, which means there was 1 Yid. Now we are not saying that they are all under the trapped debris. Then there's no Roiv. At least for a moment, we know they were all there. There was a moment when there was a Yisraeli there. There aren't 10 right now, even if we know there weren't 10. But since for sure there was a chazaka that a Yid was there, we don't follow Roiv. The case of Rabbi Yechanan, it's great. It's only the Parush Miksa Sayim. So building A, you have 9 Kutim and 1 Yid. Not all of them Bechlal went to building B. We don't even know if a Yid was there prior to its collapse. Forget about that. Now we don't know who's underneath it. So since there was never a Cheskas Yisrael, so Rabbi Yechanan says, you're not Machal Shabbos. Wow. Says the Gemara, me, Amar Shmuel. Let's go back to the rule. Shmuel says you don't follow Roiv. You don't follow Roiv when it comes to life. Is that true? How can you say that? But we learned this a Mishnah in Machshirin. It says that the tragic cases that if matzah batinoik mushlach, if you find a child thrown in the street, a living child, so Yid or a Goy, start with that. Says the Mishnah. Imrayv kutiyim, and it's not so simple to teach the Mishnah. It's not, my friends, only about the majority of inhabitants in the location, but we're going to learn this a few other times. It's about the majority of the people also that travel through. You have to know how to put that drive together. But if, however, you determine who are we looking at to get the roiv? If roiv are kutiim, then we determine that the child is a kuti. Im roiv Yisrael, then we determine the child is a Yisrael. Another case, we'll see every clause is about something else. Mechzal mechza, we also determine that the child is a Yid. Now, what's the kasha on Shmuel? We're not there yet. But on the Mishnah of Amarav, that loy shanu elolahacha yoisoi, Rav is saying that if we want to determine Yid or Goy, again, the theoretical halacha of being Machal Shabbos, which we only might do for Yisrael, here is where the Mishnah is saying that even half and half. But if the question is about who this child can marry, for example, the child that was found was a young girl. And you know what? It was found by Jews. They're going to end up converting her. But if we're going to call that, you can call that a gir l'chumra. We don't know who her biological parents were. We don't know. Maybe she was born a Jewess. But my friends, if Shitaka was a non-Jewish and she converted, so just for example, a kohen is not allowed to marry her. That's the yichus. So he says when it comes to yichus, we can't say, well, since it was even mechzal mechza, that or roiv, she's taka Yisraeli. No, we're going to consider her for yichus. We don't know for sure. A kohen will not be allowed to marry her. We're not done yet. And on Daf Pei Hey, here comes the problem that Shmuel came ahead and he made a comment on this Mishnah of Machshirin, that what is the Mishnah going about? Lifakeach olav esagal. The Mishnah wants to know again whether you can be whether you can be Machal Shabbos going through the debris of a collapsed building. Look inside the top of Rashi. That's what Shmuel is saying. That only im roiv Yisrael, only then can you go through the debris. Rashi adds, Avol mechza mechza, even though the Mishnah writes mechza mechza Yisrael. We'll see in a moment the end line of the Mishnah is another case. Shmuel says, L'chora, regarding the Reisha, that only when Roiv Yisrael can we say that if this child later is trapped under a building, you can be mefakech hasagal. Meaning if it's mechzal mechza, or for sure, if the area that you found the child was roiv kutim, then we determine the child is a kuti. And if later this child is under the gal on Shabbos, you can't be machal Shabbos. Hold on, Shmuel said by pikuach nefesh, you don't go after roiv. Gavaldik. Kashan Shmuel answers the Gemara, ki itmer, the statement of Shmuel was areisha itmer. What's the areisha? The first case of the Mishnah Machshirim, which is the second to last line on the Pedal Amud Beis, was not in Roiv Yisrael. He only said it by Roiv Kutim. Now we'll read it. Im Roiv Kutim, we say is a Kuti. You know what Shmuel said? Shmuel says, Ule'inyin pikuach nefesh eino ikein. Punkt fakert. Shmuel said, yeah, that if Roiv Kutim, for all other halachas, other than pikuach nefesh, we presume that this child is a not Yid. But if this child is trapped under a building in Machal Shabbos, because by pikuach nefesh, you don't follow Roiv. Now, let's continue to read how Shmuel understood every clause of the Mishnah. Let's chaparayim over here. Says the Gemara. Now, im Roiv kutim, lamai hilchasem. So if it's not regarding pikuach nefesh, give me an example. Rav Papa gives a great example. Amar Rav Papa, lachil and avelis. Achil and avelis. In other words, Rashi is acknowledging a few lines above the Amid, 6 lines on the top of the Amid. Listen, we're speaking about the Yidden who found the child. They're going to be Megayer that child, but until you Megayer the child, if Roiv Kutim, you can give the child Nevelis, and if not, be a Dayim. We're not allowed to feed the children Treif. Next, when it says in the next line, now is the second line of the Mishnah. Im Roiv Yisrael, Lamai Hilchas, another halacha, even though we learned Chevre right above Mitzvah, that we create a tremendous Kiddush Hashem by returning a lost article to a non-Jew. We're not obligated to do so. To a Yid, you're mechoyev to do Hashavas Aveda. So lahachzolei Avedos. The last clause in the Mishnah, the last line of the Mishnah, Mechzal Mechza Yisrael, says the Gemara Lamai Hilchasa. What is that referring to? Amerei Shlakish. It's referring to the din of damages. What's the din of damages? So let's quickly chazer these laws. The fact that if my animal damages you or your property, that I, the owner, I'm chayiv to pay, don't take that as a given. Yes, that's what Torah says, But the halachas depend on who the owner is. And this is the rule, that if the shiur belongs to a Yisrael, another thing, if a shiur shel Yisrael damages the property of a kuti, the Jew is exempt from paying. Don't forget, the Jew did not do the damage. The fact that memoinoi hizik or shaloi shamar is an anomaly. We actually have a Mishnah that says that if our minor children damage, halachically the parents don't have to pay. That's why pigiyas and ra in this context. I'm not saying that the parents should not go beyond the letter of the law, but we're speaking just about the ikar adin. We have to get used to these halachas. So this is the rule. If the ox belongs to a yid and it gores the ox of a kuti, the owner is spotted. In the opposite, a kshoir of a kuti that gores a ox of a yid. So the din is, this is what God told Moshe Rabbeinu, that the owner is chayiv to pay nezek sholem, and we don't differentiate whether the ox is called a tam or called a muad, as we will learn, God willing, in Bava Kama. If an ox of a yid gores another yid, that's where we have this whole din, tam, chatzi nezek, umi gufay, vechulei, and muad is mishala nezek shal. These are the quick overview of the rules of Nizakin. And now let's word it in our case of Machshirin with this abandoned child. Says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, tell me, how do we apply the Mechza al Mechza Yisrael? Let's apply this. If the case is where the Nakhe Toira Didan, that our ox gored the ox of this child that grew up, that is now an adult, right, who never converted. And what are we saying? That since he was found in a location where it was 50 Yidden and 50 Kutim, so he has a din of a Yisrael, and therefore what? If he would be a goy, we would pay nothing. That's the rule. Shiur shel Yisrael shenagach shiur shel kuti potter. So the owner says, maybe you're a kuti. The victim is saying, no, I'm a Yid, you got to pay me. So the Gemara says, it can't be that the Mishnah is saying we give him a status of a Yid. No. When it comes to money, we say, and indeed, the naisei raya v'nishkal, the owner of the ox can tell the victim, I'm sorry, but you have to bring a proof that you're a Yid. And the Mishnah is not saying that since it's mechza al mechza, he has the din of a Yisrael, lo hoitzi mamoinoi mechaskasi. Loi, indeed, you know what the case is referring to, tzricha, the nagchei tura didei l'tura didon. It was his ox that gored our ox. Now listen, if he would have a status of a kuti, he would have to pay nezek sholem. Since it's mechza al mechza, he only pays half a damage. Palga yovle. But idach palga, if the victim is saying, you got to pay me because you have a din of a kuti, he has the right to say, no, I was found in a place where it was half and half. You bring a raya, the lava Yisrael ano, forget, you're the moitzim achaveiroi. When you're the moitzim achaveiroi, the mechza al mechza establishes him as a yid, and only if you prove me to be a non-yid, then I'm going to pay you full damage. Right now, my animal was a tam, and therefore I will only pay you chatzi nezek. We'll stop over here. Chavre, God willing, to be continued.
Shkoyach.
That was great.
Baruch.
So Monday morning, guys, 6:00. We should have a no fast. Mashiach should come tonight.
Lovely. What davening tomorrow? What time?
8:00.